Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society's November First Friday pub session. I'm Richard Gosselin. I'm the editor of the Society's members magazine, Unfiltered, and I will be your pub landlord tonight. So it's November. You may have noticed the nights are fair drawing in. It's getting a wee bit dark and gloom out there. But this month, we're all about courieing in and making the most of the season as we head through autumn into winter. And we can take great comfort, obviously, from fantastic whiskey, but we're also going to bring you some amazing music tonight. And we've got a Scandinavian expert on the art of hygge, if I'm saying it correctly, which is all about that sense of well-being and what you can do at this time of year to kind of make the most of the darkness and embrace the season rather than fear it. So lots of good stuff coming up this evening. And wherever you are, give us a shout out. Where are you? What are you drinking? How are you doing? Always looking out for your comments. So be sure and let us know how you're doing. But I'm delighted that this evening I have a co-host joining us who is a young man called Alistair Heather. Some of you who may have been reading Unfiltered will have seen Ali's face because he's written for us quite recently about Scots, the Scots language in the whiskey world. Ali's a proficient Scots speaker and he's joining us tonight. Ali, how are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Good evening, Richard. Great to be here. Great to be in the pub, sort of, on a Friday night.
Yeah, where are you? Looks like
As
you're
you
in
can
the
see,
members room.
The members' room on Bath Street, a very bonny location. As you can see, fairly quiet due to lockdown restrictions and the fact I'm in front of a green screen in my flat. But absolutely delighted to be joining you anyway.
Brilliant. Well, it looks very convincing. So we're going to catch up with Ali to hear about the use of Scots in the whiskey world and about courieing in general. So more to come from Ali. But we want to kick off this evening with some music. There's a Scottish band called Brebach who have been very kind in allowing us to play some of their music tonight. It's pre-recorded, but they've given us 3 pieces of music which they recorded during the summer as part of the Edinburgh International Festivals. It was called My Light Shines, and it's a celebration of the festival city, which they recorded at Leith Theatre, not far from our own spiritual home at the Vaults. So we've got 5.5 minutes of absolutely brilliant music. So if you don't have a whiskey in your glass already, I urge you to pour one right now, and this is going to just transport you to a better place. So this is Brebach, and it is their track, which is called The Last March. So let's kick off with that right now. What about that, Ali? Is that not soothing for the soul?
Just like hating Breabach on a Friday night with a dram is exactly how I'd be choosing to spend my time anyway. Breabach I'd actually booked them for a huge gig. We just sold out a 500-seat theatre in Arbroath for April. And we were just ticking down Breabach with the headliners. And they were going to come and rock the gig as like the big main event on April the 4th, it was due to be. And of course, it was about the first thing. Lockdown happened just a few days beforehand. So it's great to be able to hear and see that they're still going so strong.
Well, nice to see that they've been active during lockdown and able to record some great music. And thanks again to Breabach for sharing that with us. We've got 2 more tracks from them, and they pick up the pace, shall we say. I wanted to kind of start off with one of their gentler tunes to ease us into the session, but they're going to pick up the pace a wee bit later on. So more to come from Breabach, and thanks to those guys for sharing the tunes. But it's about Courieing In tonight, Ali, and you know, there's all these different elements that come into Courieing In, and music's one part of it, and whiskey's another part of it. But I'm interested, from your point of view, you're a scholar of the Scots language. And, you know, we talk about Courieing In, that's part of our everyday language, but it is a Scots term, right?
It is 100%. So like when I was a bairn, when I was a young person, like when I was a wee kid, we'd always get told, when it's nighttime, you get told to coorie doon. Like that's time to like snuggle into your blankets, get good and warm, coorie doon, and just get to sleep. And it was, coorie has... And another use of it is like you'd coorie in beside your granny or your granda or something to watch the telly. So the word coorie is really associated for a lot of Scots folk with that idea of coziness, of safety, of comfort, and of love. Like it is like Scots, I always say, is a language of love, in that Scots folk use it mostly around their family, around their closest pals. So it's got a real emotional resonance. Now, I want to make clear, we are going to talk a bit about Scots this evening, but it's no some exclusive little hard to access language. It's very shared with other languages around the North Sea basin. So we obviously, our guest this evening is from Norway. We're going to talk a bit about the shared connections between Scots and Norwegian. I've seen some of your audience are from places like York, where they share a lot of the old English terms that underpin the foundations of Scots. So hopefully we'll not just be talking about Scots, but also talking about the kind of the shared languages we all hate. Like I wrote actually for Unfiltered, the reason that I got in touch with yourself and we started blethering together was because I'd been kind of brought in for this project at a place called the Cabrach. So For them at home that are kind of familiar with whiskey smuggling, the Cabrach was the whiskey smuggling region par excellence. It's in the northeast of Scotland, kind of right 50 miles in from Aberdeen, just on the edge of the Cairngorm Mountains. Like it's the last inhabited place before you get to the big Highland plateaus. And there they are rebuilding an old kind of whiskey centre that's going to be turned over the next few years into a visitor centre, a heritage centre, and a wee distillery, hopefully, so a craft distillery. And they brought us in to access some of the stories to help give it a bit of life. And something I noticed when I went to all the archives, you hear these great digital archives, they folk for the 1920s, 30s, 40s, recorded on old tapes. And they're all talking about whiskey smuggling. They're talking about the different methods of distillation, but they're all doing it in really broad, rich Northeast Scots. And it struck me that growing up, most of the best stories I was told about whiskey or about the whole culture around it were in Scots. So I thought, well, we article in Unfiltered and us here in a chat tonight, I'd introduce some of the audience to the idea of Scots, help them, encourage them to use Scots as a means to access more whiskey stories, more whiskey culture, and to get that proximity with the dram that we all find so interesting.
But I suppose, Ali, we use Scots, we don't even think about it. You know, it's part of our language, and we don't stop to think that, oh, that's a Scots word. And, you know, there were some examples of that in the piece that you wrote for Unfiltered, related specifically to the whiskey world. Like a copper dog is one of them. There's a relation between that and Scots language, or something like a shuggle box you were talking about in terms of like sifting the grist for the mash. You know, so there is this language, or even like a druth. That's another one, isn't it? You know, you talk about having a right druth on, and that's a good Scots word. Obviously, for you want to quench your thirst. So the language is there, but I guess we don't stop and think about it, or maybe we don't have the confidence to use it as much in certainly in written language. It's maybe more of a spoken culture.
No, you're absolutely right. And as you say, because the whiskey distillation process was so focused around Scots-speaking areas, around the Northeast in particular, you do hear that vocabulary built right the way through the whole process. So right at the start, you had to steep the barley, and steep is just a Scots word meaning to soak. So you soak it a wee bit before you dry it out, and then you hate, as you say, where they salt the malt for the chaff. They call it the shuggle box, where they just shake it up. Shuggle is an excellent word. If you are watching at home and you are keen to get a couple of wee bits of Scots vocabulary, a shuggle box is a good one to turn up with at the distillery. A lot of the distillery workers speak Scots, so they'll really empathise with that. But as you say, there's something, a lot of Scots wasn't seen as a written language for the last 50 years. It's been slightly kind of hodding down. But distilleries are actually these confident cultural centres in Scots-speaking areas that are helping give it a bit of a platform and give it a bit of an airing. So the Cabrach, of course, Scots will be through that distillery. But there's distilleries already, for example, Glengarry, the distillery in the northeast, has Scots language signs all the way through. You aren't meant to understand it immediately as a visitor, but all the Scots language signage was written by the staff. And the whole idea is you're meant to say, oh, you've drunk the millet. I don't really care what that means. And you ask the staff what it means, and they explain, and it forms a cultural bridge. And it's another way of enriching that experience. And I know that the distillery down in Annandale that does the Man of the Sword and the other whiskey that's kind of Burns related, off into Scots language. So there is a real connection with it.
And coming back to the notion of currying in, and one of our greatest poet, not one of our greatest poets, our greatest poet, Robert Burns, he kind of captured that sense of currying in probably his best known poem, well, maybe apart from Auld Lang Syne, but in Tam O'Shanter. You picked it out when we were talking about this earlier, about that notion of being in a nice warm pub, curried into the fire, having a nice drink with your pals. And he captures that in his Scots language. And I think you were going to give us a wee bit of Burns to kind of bring to life the Scots, but also to bring to life that sense of what it is to coorie in on a dark winter night in Scotland and appreciate the warmth and the good company from being cooried into the fire.
100%. No, I should say, anybody that's been to a burn supper kens that the Tam O'Shanter is about 15, 20 minutes long. I'm not doing the whole thing. I'm doing a tiny wee extract. Me and Richard were having a blether in the week about other stuff. And we were chatting about this evening and the fact we have a Norwegian on. And I was thinking, does Scotland have a Hygge culture? Do we have, what's the connection? Like, obviously we have the Dark Winter Nights. And I was mulling it over. And then it just occurred to me, this couple of lines for Tam O'Shanter. So Tam O'Shanter is a poem about a guy called Tam. And it starts off in the pub. And there's this wee scene here that just strikes me so much as Hygge. So don't worry, like I'll break down the language for you. But it starts, a market night, Tam got planted, unca right, fast by an ingle, bleezing finely, with reeman swats that drank divinely. And at his elbow, Suitor Johnny, his ancient, trusty, drouthy crony. I'll pause and just break that down for you a wee bit. So, a market night, Tam got planted, unca right. Tam's just a common Scots name. It's just like Thomas. Fast by an ingle, bleezing finely. So that's him planted right by the fire. The ingle is the fire. It comes for the Gaelic. Inger, I'm mispronouncing that, but it comes for the Gaelic, I promise. So he's sat there, he's right in planted, like, you know, his roots are down. He's no shifting for a while. He's right in by this good hot blazing fire. And then at his elbow, Suitor Johnny, his ancient, trusty, drouthy crony. So his pal Johnny, who's with him, isn't he just sat across the table? Isn't he like sat nearby? He's at his elbow, he's tucked right in, he's cooried into him almost. So you hear the fire on one side, you hear your best pal in the world on the other, and you hear reeman swats that drank divinely. I mean, that is setting us up so lovely. And then, of course, you've got, so in the pub scene here, you got the Johnny, you got your fire, and the poem continues. The nicht drave on with sangs and clatter, and aye, the ale was growing better. The landlady in Tam grew gracious, with secrets sweet and precious. The suitor told his queerest stories, the landlady's laugh was ready chorus. The storm outside might rear and rustle. Tam didn't mind the storm a whistle. Now, that to me is coorie. The Scottish culture is a participatory culture, right? So you're meant to, if you're all in this wee room together, and the pub that I grew up in my wee village was exactly like this, a big roaring fire, and when you go in, you didn't seclude yourself off at your wee table. Everyone that comes in, you say hello to, and you're all part of one big evening together. Suitor Johnny bringing out his best stories. That is Scottish Hygge. That's you bringing out, like, using that oral culture, using that storytelling medium to bring everybody together, to make the landlady laugh, to entertain your pal. He's probably heard it 100 times. He's happy to hear it again. A wee drink, a good hot fire. That to me, and also vitally, that final line, the storm outside might rear and rustle. Tam didn't mind the storm a whistle. It's no coping with the weather. It's just forgetting the weather even exists. And I thought that they wee lines there, I'd really recommend Tam O'Shanter. It's an incredible piece of work. But there's something really, I really empathise with that, Richard. I'm sure you've been in 100 situations like that.
Well, I never had to ride a horse home after being in the pub and get chased by a bunch of witches and try and make it over the Keystone or the Brig to my angry wife. But you know, I can identify with being in a nice warm pub and not wanting to leave. So no, absolutely no. It's a brilliant example, and as you say, Ali, even if we don't understand all the words, their exact meanings, it doesn't really matter because you get this sense of what it's all about from the rhythm and just you know, it's such rich language that it's a great example. But we'll talk more about cooring in from a Scandinavian perspective fairly soon. But, you know, we're here to talk about whiskey as well. Your local distillery, you're up in you're in Dundee just now, Ali, right? But you're an Angus boy, and your local distillery really is Fettercairn. And you were up there during lockdown, weren't you? So You've written a piece for the December issue of Unfiltered. It's a work in progress, but coming out next month. But tell us about your visit to Fettercairn. We're going to be able to hear from the distillery manager in a wee bit, but tell us about your visit up to Fettercairn.
So I'll just introduce it. Like, a lot of folk that are watching this will ken the distillery areas inside out. So a lot of you have been lucky enough to go to Speyside, incredible area for whiskey, or at Islay, Jura, that sort of thing. The Hout of the Mearns is a wee part of Scotland just on the edge of the Cairngorms on the east coast, like south of Aberdeen, north of Dundee. It's where loads and loads of the barley for whiskey comes from. The whole area is barley. And there's a wee village there called Fettercairn, and there isn't a mere bonny little Scots tune going. Like, the whole place was built at one time. It's got a beautiful distillery right on the edge with a pagoda roof. It's got a little shop called the Fettery Shoppy. It's got a really strong community spirit. It's got an old market cross, and it's right there on the edge, that liminal space between the kind of the lovely sun-struck fields and the big high mountains. And the boy that runs the distillery is Fae the village. His name's Stuart, and he's very of the area. Now, I'd seen Stuart do a couple of promo videos in the past, and he speaks quite sort of proper English when he's doing the things. But I've met him around Fettercairn a couple of times, and he's as broad as anything, a really good Scots speaker. And speaking to him in person, he just gave you this tremendous sense of passion and enthusiasm for the, I think, less celebrated than it should be whiskey Fettercairn. Maybe chuck in the comments. I'm not sure if you have been drinking Fettercairn yourselves. But so as soon as we were able, I nipped out there with a pal of mine, Josh, who's a dab hand with the cameras, and did a wee interview for with Stuart at the distillery, and that'll be in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society's online magazine. But we've got a wee clip this evening just to give you a hint of the man and the whiskey.
It was ideal, if you like, for making a distillery. It was ideal, if you like, for making a distillery here, based on the fact that water was already here. You know, it was just perfect. You know, so Alexander Ramsay, who built the distillery in 1824, obviously picked the prime spot, to be honest. The water rises in the spring about 12 miles above the distillery, makes its way down under lock and key, because obviously, you know, we can't allow contamination of any sort. Not only do we use that spring water to make the whisky here and use it in the mashing, but we also use it, what we do that's totally different from any other distillery in Scotland, is that we actually cool the head of the still, if you like, when we're on the middle cut. Basically, is we're drenching the head of the still with cold water. We're allowing that water to run down the head of the still. And if you imagine within the still, this, the pure, you know, the lighter notes that you want in your final product make their way up the middle, so they're quite happily going up the middle of the still. The heavier, more oilier notes have separated, because that's where they'll naturally go, you know, just with the whole process. And when they hit the cold surface, eventually they're going to hit the reflux, if you like, and fall back in. It's not only is that iconic to Fettercairn, but it's just absolutely stunning to see. When you see it in action, it's just magical. A clever guy called Alexander Mingus invented it, for want of a better word, in 1952. He was a manager of the distillery, and he was looking for different ways to make his spirit better, if you like, and he come up with this idea. In my eyes, he's done. He's got a couple of guys with hoses, just spraying the head, again, just the heat of the still. And he's obviously knows the spirit as it's coming through, and like, yeah, it's a wee bit lighter, it's a wee bit lighter. So he's obviously commissioned, got this cooling ring made, and there's the one that's on number one side's the original cooling ring. It's been there since 1952. There's a cooling ring, if you like, on the neck of the bottle, which signifies the cooling ring we have on the still. And then we've got these lines, if you like, running down the outside of the bottle. That's kind of, if you imagine the water running down the outside of the still on the still head, that's just what that signifies. Because we're so unique, and we're so proud of the fact that we've done that. And it's still, as far as I know, no one else in the world that actually does that.
That's just obviously a wee insight into Stuart there. Mind and check back in. I think it's 4th of December, the next Unfiltered's out, and there's a Langer video along with that lets you see more of the distillery, more of the culture around there. There's also an interview with a local farmer. It is well worth a watch. The boy's a belter. Yeah. But yeah, what Stuart's saying there, that really comes across. I've obviously got the Fettercairn 12 here, and you can see that cooling ring on the top of the bottle. And it's a really, like, it ends up with a really bonny kind of, like, it's a wee work of art, you know? And I'm glad to see it having that kind of commitment to detail.
That bottle, beautiful, Ali, and it's nice to hear Stuart putting things in his own words and in his own language, you know. We've got just by chance, we have a nice bottle coming out next week from distillery number 94. I wonder if anyone can guess what distillery 94 is. But you were meant to get this, but unfortunately, I think maybe there was some complications with the delivery and it didn't turn up. But at least you've got a Fettercairn there in your glass tonight, Ali. So tell us what you're getting from your glass of Fettercairn there.
See, now this is a dram I swear by, and it's like, obviously there is an element of it being fairly local to me, but when you go around the world and you drink all the different whiskies, this is so, as Stuart was saying, it's so light, it's so kind of all its notes are kind of the top end. It's all your sort of tropical fruits. It's all your really light kind of your nectarines rather than anything too heavy. And it's so light, and it's genuinely, it's a refreshing. You didn't get, because it's not got the heavy oily notes. The Cooling Ring takes care of them. You're left with this really light kind of aromatic, like, yeah, those sort of high fruits, and it's so refreshing. So I'm seeing John there is saying it's an underrated distillery. John, me and you are a common mind. What are you getting yourself? You're on a slightly different bottle than me.
Well, I mean, I'm on a obviously it's a society bottling, so it's cask strength. This is 63.3%. So it's certainly not light in terms of its ABV. It's packing a big punch, but it's still, you know, even at that high alcoholic strength, it is deliciously drinkable. I mean, maybe try it with a wee bit of water, but even without water, it is luscious and sweet. It's got a lovely wee bit of spice to it. But even without water, you could drink this quite happily. And it's having seen the Cooling Ring at work, I'm thinking, well, that must have an effect on the lightness of the spirit, but it's amazing. Even at this strength, it is very drinkable.
There's this wee line for Hugh McDermott. He's a great Scots poet, a great Scottish artist. He spent a long time. He did his best work living in Montrose in Angus, very near where I'm fain, very near to Fettercairn. So Fettercairn would have been his local distillery as well. And he penned, not to drag us back to poetry, but he penned these couple of lines that he doesn't say he's talking about Fettercairn, but I think he must be. Like, there's some, like, it's just 4 lines. He says, "Now I'm grown old, and I'm glad to know here in Scotland we've still many a quiet town where the whiskey is as soft as a candle's flame and only slightly warmer going down." And that really resonates, you know, that only slightly warmer going down. That's this, like you say, 60%. I'm at the 40% here, and it's just so light and it's so enjoyable. It's, you know, it's a perfect one for a cold night.
Definitely. Fantastic. Well, there's more of that to come. As Ali says, he was working on a piece for December's Unfiltered. There's a longer feature about the How of the Mearns, the area, which is so important. It's a kind of unsung area, but it provides a lot of the barley that goes into whiskey production across Scotland. So we're going to give it a proper shout out in December's Unfiltered, as well as hearing more from Stuart and one of the farmers in the How of the Mearns, speaking in their own language. And it's brilliant. It's rich language. It's a rich part of the world. So we're going to give it some attention, some needed attention. So look out for that in the December Unfiltered. But I want to move on now because we have a special guest joining us from, well, not from Norway, but a Norwegian guest. Her name is Signe Johansen, and I hope I'm saying the name correctly. Signe, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
School. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on board. You got a wee whiskey in your glass already tonight? I
sure do. In fact, I have this, which is extremely exciting. Very seasonally appropriate.
Fantastic.
I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. It's a blended malt that we're going to have coming out fairly soon at the Society. We'll come to Spice Cannon because I've got that to taste here as well. But let me give you a proper introduction. You are an author. You are a chef. You're an all-round expert on, and I don't think I'm going to say this correctly, but I'll have a go, but hygge. Correct me.
She immediately laughs.
I'm only giggling because I spent the better part of 2 months when my book came out in 2016 having people tell me how to pronounce hygge, because in Danish you say hygge and in Norwegian we say hygge, so there's a slightly different emphasis on the
okay. So if I get it wrong, I can just say I'm saying it in a Danish way.
It's fine.
I'm saying it in the Scottish way. Okay, but you've written a book about hygge, the Scandinavian winter survival tactics, which is what we're all about, but you've also written a book called Spirited, which is about how to create easy, fun drinks at home. So these are like, this is like the perfect combination of books for right now, about how to make the most of surviving winter and how to make drinks at home to kind of see you through the winter. But we're kind of getting on board in Scotland with this notion of Korean that we've been talking about with Ali, and that sense of being cozy and comfortable in the pub. But it seems to be kind of becoming more of a thing to talk about Korean in. But before we go any further, can you give me your definition of hygge and what it means from your perspective?
Well, I'm not as much of an expert in Norse or Old Norwegian as Alistair is with the Scots language. My father is actually much more of an expert in this field, but I do know that the west coast of Norway, where we're from, hygge, which is the sort of Old Norse version of hygge, actually historically meant to be or to think, which sounds very philosophical and very Zen. And as you might have guessed, is not the interpretation that we've had since 2016. It's all about cozy blankets and hot chocolates and candles. And so to me, it means basically being very present, enjoying oneself. There's an element of kind of healthy hedonism to it, not being too precious about things. And, I like candles and I like blankets and I wear cozy jumpers, but it's not just about kind of the material side of it. Although I'd say whiskey is probably essential.
What do you think we can learn in Scotland, saying that, about the Scandinavian approach to winter and getting through this season?
Well, to be honest, I reckon you've already got all the elements. It's not unique to Scandinavia, the idea of getting through winter. And I think Alistair makes a really good point that rather than thinking of it as a season that we have to cope with, it's actually a season that we know comes every year, and it's all about preparedness. It's about kind of getting ready. There's a certain element of kind of nesting, of like looking after, your home life, making your home feel comfortable and safe and a place where you'd want to spend time in. But I reckon that's true of any cold climate, whether you go up to Canada or Russia or, any country, any part of the world where you get long, brutal winters. The only difference really between Scotland and Norway and the rest of Scandinavia is that our winters are perhaps a bit longer. So it kind of starts in October and goes until like March or even April beyond. So actually, you've got all the elements, like, as you say, the Kuri, the sort of culture of, and the kind of poetic nature of this whole idea of Kuri is obviously very deeply ingrained in Scottish life. And maybe it's just a word that was kind of, or a concept that was kind of forgotten, but it's a very timely revival. And yeah, I just think, there's nothing culturally unique about these things. We're cultures that have had to survive hardship, and we've been shaped by our environment, and that's why we end up having these these tactics to get through winter.
You talk about that. You talk about that notion of how do you put it, healthy hedonism. So is it that sense that, okay, things are a little bit grim outside, so we should be looking to treat ourselves. Just
right.
we should allow ourselves that to help us to kind of deal with conditions.
I think so. I mean, there's always, like with anything, a little, everything in moderation is, it's probably going to do you some good. And the idea that we have this sort of puritanical approach to looking after ourselves, it's all about punishing ourselves. It's not really what I grew up with, certainly in Norway. And I think most people don't want to live like that. I hope most people don't want to live like that. And so actually this idea of just how that hedonistic tilt is really important, to actually be able to say, I'm going to cook myself a delicious meal. I'm going to go outside, maybe go for a walk or go for a dramble, take a little sip of whiskey with you in a flask. Obviously, we can't really socialize in the same way as we did pre-pandemic, but that idea of actually savoring something, I think, is really important. And because my background's in food and drink, well, more food than drink, but I really do believe that that's kind of a philosophy worth pursuing, that we're not constantly negating things. We're not kind of living in a state of denial and like, oh God, I can't have this and I can't have that. It's like, no, actually, why not? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen next. So
I will drink to that.
Something I'm really interested in. So you say that Scottish people already have a lot of the traits you're talking about for the culture, but me and Richard are absolutely scratching our heads, and we're both culturally minded folk. And it took me digging back a couple of 100 years of poetry before I could find that nailed-down example of something we actually already practice. Is naming it. Do you think that really helps? Like having a name and saying, I am now going to do that. Does that help sustain it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, language is important, right? We know this, that the kind of words that we use can shape the way that we think and the way that we view the world. And that's why it's so fascinating to learn about old words and why they've maybe become not obsolete, because this is not an obsolete word, but why they've sort of fallen by the wayside, what's behind that. It's constantly evolving. So I do think that by naming it, you are giving it some sort of shape and definition. And what I find frustrating sometimes with these concepts of living is that people become very rigid in their definitions. It has to be like this or it has to be like that. And actually, it's pretty fluid. These things can actually be, they can be open to interpretation depending on, how you want to look at it.
I suppose saying that it's, obviously we're in a very different world at the moment, and we are looking for comfort indoors, absolutely. But by the very circumstances we're in, we're being forced outdoors more and looking to socialize with people outdoors. It's for many of us, it's the only way we can meet people in a safer environment when they can't come into our homes. So there's also that sense of Curie or a Hygge, where you're indoors and make yourself comfortable. But how do we embrace outdoor living as we head into this, coronavirus winter that we're in? What can we learn from the Scandinavia in terms of that outdoor life?
Well, the simplest and most obvious step is to prepare accordingly. So, make sure you're dressed in layers. You've got to be pragmatic about these things. So have a rucksack, a flask, have the kind of kit that you need to stay warm when you're outdoors, because you might not be on the move the whole time. You might want to stop and, have a bite to eat or have a wee dram sitting down somewhere. So you've just got to be prepared. And also, I think approaching it as it goes back to what Alistair was saying, that reframing the idea that it's not about coping and it's not about sort of forcing yourself to do something. It's not about like, oh gosh, it's horrible outside, I have to go out. It's actually saying, well, I'll feel better for having done it. You never regret going outdoors and getting some fresh air. You always come back feeling better for it. You clear your head. We know that it's very good for our mental health as well as our physical health. So being outdoors, especially if you can get out somewhere green or get down to the coast or into the mountains, it's really vital for our sense of well-being. And I think once you start thinking of it as something that actually is going to improve your sense of self, then that makes it so much easier to go out. It doesn't seem like such a chore.
Richard, I mean, this is great stuff. I think we should get a Signet on the First Minister's briefings at lunchtime. So you hear like, okay, we've had this many infections overnight. Okay, you're not allowed to go out. You're not allowed to sort of go to Edinburgh anymore. And then Signet comes in, but don't worry. Here's 3 lovely jumpers and 4 nice walks, 2 nice whiskies for you to enjoy this afternoon. I'm just kind of.
I'm already an advocate for the outdoor living because, you know, I got some whiskey to sample and I had it last night. And, you know, I don't want to sit and sample whiskey by myself. I can't have anyone come into my home to share the experience. But at least it was a dry night. And last night I went outside and I've got a green space out in front of me and I wrapped up. I got the long johns on. I layered up Scandinavian style and I took the whiskies out with a couple of camping chairs and I got together with a couple of friends, socially distanced outside, and we sampled our whiskies. And it was great. And it's not something that I would ever have thought of doing prior to this situation with the virus. But I have to say, I had a lovely time. I wasn't cold. The whiskey was fantastic, and it was a very pleasant experience. So I suppose it's just that sense of making the best of it and potentially doing things that you're not used to doing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think that's it. It's about, you know, we're very comfortable in our lives. Our modern life is pretty convenient. It's pretty straightforward. We don't have to challenge ourselves physically that much, you know, compared to our grandparents or, you know, our ancestors. And so actually in a way that this period has forced us to pause and kind of reset and think about the way that we live our lives and actually kind of, you know, push that comfort zone a little bit further out. And that's no bad thing. You know, if there's any upside to this whole period, maybe if people start to appreciate the outdoors more, being in nature more, then that will be a good thing.
Well, it worked for me as long as it's not pouring down. But even if it's pouring, I suppose there's other ways you can get around it. Saying that, let's drink some whiskey. You already said you have some of our Spice Cannon, which is the latest blended malt that's coming out from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. One of a series that I've been working on. Most of what we do is single cask whiskey, but we do produce the occasional blended malt, which we're able to give out to members in bigger numbers because there's more than just one cask. So this is the latest one. It's coming out on the 16th of November. So it's not out yet, but we managed to get a couple of bottles. Ali's was meant to be arriving, but as we said, he had a wee bit of problem with his delivery. But
you thumped it in the ground and the whole thing smashed. I was furious.
Oh no!
I know.
He's getting a replacement, so all's well that ends well. So it's I would say it's a lovely Christmassy dram. Sing that, it's I don't know what you're getting from it, but I'm certainly getting those kind of it's been matured in sherry casks, so it's got those typical Oloroso characteristics of nuttiness, some kind of maybe dark chocolate, and very kind of comforting, warming notes that you associate maybe more so with this time of year as you approach Christmas. The smell of cinnamon, maybe. But I'm curious as to what you think of it, Signa.
I really love it. It's really smooth, and as you say, the sherry casks really bring out those kind of festive flavor, those festive flavors in that sense of like, it's we're going into winter. We're all using more spices in our food and our baking. We want to have hot toddies. There's a reason why we're drawn to those flavors this time of year. They are really soothing and comforting, and of course they're delicious. And I immediately thought of several things that I would want to have this with. And in fact, I might try and bake it this weekend because it's definitely it's getting cooler this weekend, so it's perfect timing to do some baking. And I really want to make a sort of Scandinavian style kringle, which is a wreath, like a festive wreath, made with an enriched cardamom dough, and you fill it with an almond filling, which can either be marzipan or you can make like an almond butter with vanilla, and then lots of like dried fruit, like dried sour cherries, cranberries, maybe some apricots, just the whole whole gamut of dried fruits. Maybe even soak some of the fruit in the whiskey, which I think would be really lovely. And then bake that, and then you could do even a whiskey drizzle on top as a kind of really decorative, festive flourish. And yeah, there's lots of things I want to do with this. There's almond cakes, there's almond biscuits. There's, I think, the nuttiness, anything with nut, citrus, and spice, just it's like a whole kind of festive trifecta that I really get quite excited about.
That sounds. What did you call it? Kringla.
Kringle, Kringle.
Did you hear Richard? He get improvement in pronunciation. I thought he went from here to here in one go. It's pretty good.
I thought I was deteriorating.
What's the name of the wreath thing? Sorry, Richard. What's the name of the wreath thing?
I'm going to go with Kringla.
Yep. Very
Come
good.
on.
It sounds magic because it's like ticking all, as you say, saying that it's like ticking all those boxes for the flavor pairings between the food. And I have to say, I had a wee bit of a tiffin. I don't know if you know what tiffin is, but it's like a wee chocolate treat. And I had a bit of tiffin last night with my spice cannon. And I have to say, I was in heaven with that combination of some chocolate with the sherried whiskey was absolutely brilliant as well. But you talked a short time ago about drambling and that idea of getting outdoors, making the most of whatever daylight we have, but taking a drink with you. How do you go about that? Tell us a wee bit more about the concept of drambling.
Well, it was actually, I mean, it's obviously, it's not a serious endeavor, but the word was introduced to me on a trip to Islay. Went to the Lagavulin Jazz Festival about 5 years ago, and we spent a lot of time outdoors. We went for walks on the beach, and we would have these little sips of whiskey with us. We'd have the full bottle. There was a group of us, and we'd have the full bottle, and then sip it in these tiny tasting glasses. But of course, if you have a small flask, or even if you've got a thermos, small thermos, you can carry it anywhere. And I really like the idea of just being out. As I've said before, a bit of a nature nerd, and I love being out in the elements and having been in fresh air for several hours, rosy cheeks, feeling revived. It's just the best feeling to have a small scotch outside. It's cozy in here, but really, like everything, we know this, that everything tastes better outside. There's something about the oxygen and the fact that we've been invigorated by being outdoors. But it's to me, it goes back to the idea of being a healthy hedonist. I think it's not if you were a professional athlete, you would not endorse going around with whiskey, having kind of done lots of exercise. But for the rest of us, it's a simple pleasure, and I think everything in moderation. Why not?
That is a very, very good message for everyone. Everything in moderation, but let's treat ourselves. We're living through some difficult times, so let's take comfort where we can find it. So there's certainly comfort in this glass, but everything in moderation. But Spice Cannon is a good way to go. So. Singla, thank you so much for joining us and enlightening us to the Scandinavian survival guide to the winter season. I hope you enjoy your whiskey, and we'll see you soon, I hope.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll be taking that quote away. Everything tastes better outdoors. I'd never noticed that, but you're bang on. I'll be taking that quote away for you tonight.
Excellent.
Before we go, I forgot. I think Ali had a wee quiz for you, Singna.
You didn't bring it up, so
let's do the quiz. If Singna's up for it, let's do the language quiz.
Right. So again, we'll be doing this a slightly briefer version. A pal of mine's a professor down at University of Glasgow, and he put together a list of 400 words that are shared between Scots and Norwegian. Right.
Oh wow.
So it's obviously pronunciation is different. So the vowel sounds tend to shift, but I wonder if the way to do this is also to bring Richard in. So I'll give you a Scots word, and if you can tell me what it means before he can, then you get bonus points. So it's a Scots word shared between So I'll give you a phrase first, right?
Okay.
So this is a verb, then a noun. Flit hoose. I'm going to flit hoose.
To move a house.
Move house.
I knew that one.
He
I'm
knew.
flitting.
It's easy to claim that.
I was just giving Signa a chance there. I didn't want to jump in too soon.
So, ready? Next team, our Dutch and I think our German listener audience will get this as well. Host.
Is it to cough?
It's the cough.
Yeah, hoste.
Host it in Scots. Host. I've got a fair host. Obviously, if you hail host these days, you get quarantined for a fortnight.
Oh, yeah.
No idea.
No, I'll give you just a couple more. This scene is a very wintry scene. Murk.
That's like a kind of gloomy, kind of murky,
dark.
gloomy, right? Yeah.
Darky gloom, exactly. I think, is that murka in Norwegian?
Mörk. Yeah, mörka is a noun, but yeah, if you're using it as an adjective, it would be mörk. Yeah.
Okay, this scene. Okay, two more, right? No, one more. Sorry, one more. So I'm going to, once we're finished with this, I'm going to red up.
Clean up.
Clean up, exactly. So Scots red up is like tidy things up. What is it in Norwegian?
Rydde.
Rydda. Once more.
Rydde. So it's RYDDE.
Rydda. So tidy is rydda.
Yeah.
So there's obviously 400 of them, and I just find it fascinating. So there's a few, obviously, your man down in York might ken a few of them, because some of them came when there was that kind of Scandinavian dominance of the north of England, and that came north for there. But also a lot of it just came for the tremendous amount of trade and relationship between Scotland and Norway over the years.
Of course.
I'm worried. I'm worried to even say what "hust" and "ha ha" means, but I have no idea.
I mean, we always say, of course, when we go to Aberdeen, that the dialect up there sounds like a Norwegian speaking English. You know, it's so similar.
It's uncanny at times, and the Shetlanders are a step closer still.
Yeah, I think half my relatives are up in Shetland.
They do.
Sing that, I should say that was bra. Well done.
Tusen takk.
Nice to see you, and all the very
We
best.
say very hyggelig.
Very good.
That's another way of using the word yeah.
You baffled us, but thank you very much.
Right.
You're welcome.
Here's Signa, all the very best.
Skål, slanche.
Oh, Slanje, Prost. Great stuff.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
What an education.
That's it. I'm of this tremendous opinion that we hate to restart the cultural ties to the Norse, because we forget we're on the bloody ends of the earth here. We think because so much of our culture comes from the south, it comes from, like mainland Europe, it comes from England, we think of ourselves as a kind of middle European country. But it isn't. It is a bit dark. It is a bit freezing. So we should tie into the Icelandics. Like, we are the southern summer climate compared to them. So we can tie in with them and learn a lot of their stuff. And that's a really well done for inviting Signa along. Really interesting.
Well, and it's been great to have her. But it's that thing where, we talk about, the most northern point of the mainland Scotland is Sutherland, which is obviously the south land to the Vikings. That was them heading south, and Sutherland for us is like way up there, but for them it was way down there. So there's, and everywhere you look in Scotland there are these connections. But in terms of the language, it's very interesting to explore that. But we're going to move on to some more. Well, I don't know if this one is in Gaelic, but it's we've got another tune from Breabach, which I'm probably saying wrong as well, because that's not a language I've got any familiarity with. But this is a second tune from Breabach. So again, brilliant stuff. Fill up your glasses and chill out. Feel a sense of well-being. This is Breabach with Birds of Passage.
Softly on the air they flow, murmurings of joy and woe, from highland shores to Scattery, their humble search for sanctuary, a timeless symphony. No border lines they see, and above on wings of grace, swift birds of passage gather pace, as they rise, as they delight, bright birds of passage wing their flight. Come the wild wind and sleet, the mountain blast, the desert heat, sacrifice on oceans deep, pilgrim souls they can't defeat, breaking through the heat and fear, eyes awake to new frontiers, on and on through grief and pain, brave birds of passage fly again, and as they light on golden strand, blessed birds of passage reach our land. Cages built to keep them bound, plaintive cries the only sound. Hold to your humanity, rise as one dignity, and up above on wings of grace, swift birds of passage gather pace, as they rise, as they delight, bright birds of passage wing their flight, and above on wings of grace, swift birds of passage gather pace, as they rise, as they delight, bright birds of passage wing their flight.
Smashing.
Beautiful stuff. Right, that was Breabach with Birds of Passage. Right, time to move on to our pub quiz. Ali, you ready for some quizzing?
100%. Never been written.
Right, so it's the usual format. We've got 10 questions, multiple choice each one. So wherever you are, you can join in by putting your answer into our comments and see how you got on. So we'll reveal each answer as we go along. So without any further ado, let's dive in and get moving on the quiz. Right, we'll take it turn around. I'll kick off, Ali. Question 1. Spice Cannon, which we've just been talking about, is matured in bourbon wood, Pedro Jimenez, and Oloroso casks. And we're probably familiar with most of that language, but what does the word Oloroso mean in Spanish? Is it nutty, dark, fragrant, or rich? Did you know this one, Ali?
I definitely did not. I had no idea at all. So are you going to tell us now, or do you hold it off for a little bit?
I was going to see if anyone was going to have a go. Vineet is straight in there with C, fragrant. So we'll see if anyone else is going to have a go. Chesterville is going with fragrant, and I know who Chesterville is. That's a pseudonym. It's not their real name. But I
Okay.
can tell you they speak Spanish, so they should.
Well,
be-
that's an unfair advantage. I've got a wee bit of French about me, but I suppose no Portuguese person's ever had the call to call me fragrant, so I haven't come across it in life.
Stephen's going for D, rich. Lee's going for fragrant. So the answer is, without any further ado, fragrant, oloroso, fragrant. So that kind of, real, well, put it this way, oloroso is the kind of go-to cask for sherry maturation in the whiskey world, because it does impart that lovely, fragrant nuttiness that comes from the oloroso sherry. And as if you're lucky enough to get hold of a bottle of the Spice Cannon, then absolutely that oloroso characteristic is coming through in the dram. Good
Oh,
stuff.
it's unbeatable. It's unbeatable. As something of mature whiskey and that just imparts flavour, you can't beat that. I've always had this opinion that like the wood brings some of the sunlight north with it. And when you have that kind of that port residue, it's been sat over there in the burning sun for so long, and it imparts some of that into the dram. It's kind of superstitious nonsense, but I really buy into it anyway. I think it's as good as a sunbed in terms of getting you vitamin D.
And as Signa was saying, for this time of year, it's an especially comforting dram. You can't go wrong with any whiskey, but this one at this time of year absolutely hits the right notes.
That's it. Now, on to my question, eh? Let's do it. So this is intense because I'm bringing you back to Tam O'Shanter. So them that are really paying attention, hey, the advantage here. So when Tam O'Shanter, who was Tam O'Shanter couried into in the pub before setting out on his ill-fated journey? So mind, you got Tam, he's there with his reaming swats that drank divinely. He's planted fast by an ingle, blazing finely. Wha is he sat next to? Let's have a wee look. I'll get a look at your comments coming in.
You need to read out the options, Ali.
Oh, sorry. We've got Holy Willie, Jean Armour, Suitor Johnny, and Cutty Sark. So Holy Willie, Jean Armour, Suitor Johnny, Cutty Sark. Obviously, they're all Wheel Kent figures for the life and works of Burns. But who is going to be first in the comments with the answer? Who was paying attention?
Well, that's the thing. If you were paying attention, then this is an easy one. Or if you know if you know Tam O'Shanter, then it's an easy one. Oh, hang on a second.
Boom! Answers absolutely flooding in. I've got one Josh Bircham with C. I've got First Fill with D. I've got Cutty Sark. I've got C's and D's, and it's Josh Bircham is correct with Suitor Johnny. So very well done to Josh there. It is, of course, and at his elbow, Suitor Johnny, his ancient, trusty, druthy crony.
What can you tell us about Suitor Johnny, Ali?
So a Suitor, it's actually a really common name. Obviously, you got John Suitor, who's when he's fit, he's a centre back for the Scottish national team. It's a very common surname throughout Scotland, and it's common because every town needed a suitor, a shoemaker, a cobbler. So Suitor is just a Scots word for a cobbler. I think on to your next question.
Well, and I will throw in that Suitor Johnny was a real guy. His name was John Davidson. And he was a real guy who his home is now a National Trust for Scotland property in the wee Ayrshire village of Kirkoswald, and it's done out there, and it's got the kind of all the tools of the trade of the cobbler trade that John Davidson would have used. I don't know if they're the genuine tools, but the kind of historic tools that he would have used as a cobbler back in the day. So Suitor Johnny, John Davidson, and his house in Kirkoswald.
And we're giving all the big places to visit once we're back out of lockdown. We're giving them the How of the Mearns, we're giving them Kirkoswald.
Exactly. Right, good stuff. So we picture round. What, simple question, what distillery is this? Right? Now, I don't know how tricky this might be, but we'll give you some options. Some of you might get it straight away. Is it A, Ardnahoe? Is it B, Rassie? Is it C, Torraveg? Or is it D, Ardnamurchan? Would you have known this one, Alec?
Absolutely not. Again, you're exposing my tremendous ignorance here. I'm from the East Coast, so much of the West Coast looks pretty similar to me. I've been to all the places.
Yeah. There's Gregor in there straight away with Ardnahoe. And Gregor knows his stuff. He's one of our ambassadors in Germany. And he's
Nice.
very well travelled around Scotland. He wrote a piece not too long ago for Unfiltered about seeking out the ghost distilleries of Scotland. A really interesting piece that Gregor put together for us, where he basically tracks down the lost distilleries of Scotland. And, you know, some of them are fairly obvious and others are just like wee piles of rubble that you wouldn't even know were there. There's a pal of mine, Liam Irvin. His name's not actually Elam, but I used to not be able to pronounce it when I was a wee boy, so he's turned out to be Elam. But he's going for Ardnamurchan. Shows how much he knows.
Ardnamurchan, by the way, so again, to give folk more places to travel once they're allowed to. Ardnamurchan is the bonniest part of Scotland that you might get to yourself. So Skye's incredible, you no get it to yourself. You know, Cairngorm, incredible, you no get it to yourself. Ardnamurchan, stunning, it's pretty inaccessible, so you can get kind of the room to roam.
Right. I think that's all the answers we're getting in.
Yeah.
The answer is Ardnahoe, which is a fairly new distillery. I think it's just a couple of years really since Ardnahoe opened up. It's on the Isle of Islay, and it looks across the Sound of Islay to the island of Jura. And I can tell you from experience, if you stand in that still room, or they have a cafe as well with windows looking out, as you can see in that picture, looking out across the Sound of Islay to Jura, it is an absolutely spectacular vantage point. It's a beautifully situated distillery, still quite young in terms of their spirit. I don't think they've got anything that's 3 years old yet, but what a location. It's absolutely brilliant. I guess if there was a competition for the best view of any distillery in Scotland, Ardnahoe would be one of the contenders, but there's some stiff competition for that one. So
100%.
Let's say Ardnahoe is one of the contenders, right? Over to you, Alec.
So again, we're going to give you a wee Scots language question this time. So this is a phrase from Doric, which is the Scots dialect spoken around the northeast. So that's Murray and Aberdeenshire principally. And the phrase is, you've drunt the mullert. You've drunt the mullert. So what could that mean? Could it mean, A, your biscuit has collapsed in your cup of tea? As you know, you're dooking the biscuit and, oh no, it's got too soggy and fallen in. Nightmare. B, you've put too much milk in the tea. You've drunt the muller. Oh, you've drunt the muller. Get us a fresh cup. Or is it you've added too much water to your whiskey? No, it's not the easiest thing to do, adding water to your whiskey, and we've all drunt the muller accidentally from time to time. Which one of these is correct? Oh, D, your cigarette end is soggy. Your cigarette end is soggy. Doesn't it happen so much these days now that obviously smoking is less popular than once it was? But which of those? A, B, C, or D? Let's have a wee look at your comments.
We did. You did mention this phrase because it's Glengarry, isn't it? That's using some of the Doric around the distillery, and this is one of the phrases that you picked out that they've got up for the visitors to see. But I don't think you translated it earlier on.
I didn't, but yeah, we're seeing the we're seeing all the clever clogs has come in. There's Josh. There's him there. Got Vincent Rohatke. And yeah, so we're seeing a lot of C's, we're seeing some D's, we're seeing some A's, and it is, I'm delighted to say, you've added too much water to your whiskey. You've drunt the mullet. So especially with Scotch Malt Whisky Society bottlings, if you are adding that wee bit of water, you hate to really canny with it, as you might say. So yeah, that's one of the phrases you can learn at Glengarry to help bring you into the Scots language of the whisky culture. And your question next?
Question 5. What is the function of the cooling rings on Fettercairn's stills? Again, we've seen this in action this evening from Ali's video that he shot up at Fettercairn and the chat that he had with the distillery manager, Stuart. But what is the function of the cooling rings on Fettercairn stills? Is it A, to stop the stills from overheating? B, to lower the strength of the spirit that's being distilled? C, cooled copper increases the reflux of vapors and a lighter spirit? Or D, does it help to create a heavier, oilier spirit? So again, this is one for those who didn't know already, but if they were paying attention, then this should be quite easy.
No, I can, but you folk that have just tuned in, as it first Phil tuned in a bit late, you've missed the whole clue. So hopefully you've got this knowledge already at the back of your head.
That's it. Let's see if anyone's going to have a go at that. Oh, there's Gregor. I mean, I'm telling you, Gregor should know the answers to these. He's a whiskey ambassador. So no excuses for Gregor. Stephen's going for C.
Honestly, C. I don't know.
There's your pal Josh going for C as well.
Josh Burjan.
Yeah. Everyone's going for C. Okay.
They got it. They were obviously watching the footage of that really distinctive cooling ring, just pouring that beautiful cold spring water down.
It's nice to see that, because you read about it, but to actually see that in action is really something. So yeah, the cooled copper increases the reflux of vapors and a lighter spirit. And reflux, we should explain that's really when the vapors that go up the neck of the still are returned back down into the pot to be distilled again, and it means that the vapors are working harder to get up the neck of the still and across the line arm to get into the condensers. So basically, the more reflux there is, the lighter the spirit, because the harder it's working, and more of the impurities are being distilled out of the spirit, and that is certainly a characteristic of Fettercairn with the cooling ring at work. So there you go, a wee bit of whiskey knowledge. Right, Ali?
See, I feel you've thrown me a hospital pass here. I feel what does Friluftsliv refer to in Norway? No, you can't
get Signe back on to criticise your pronunciation.
Signe's not here. I'm telling you, Friluftsliv. What does Friluftsliv refer to in Norway? Is it A, a fruit-only diet? B, running naked for the sauna into an icy lake? C, living without any internet connectivity? Or D, the concept of enjoying outdoor living? So 4 good options: a fruit-only diet, running naked for the sauna to an icy lake, living without any internet connectivity, or the concept of enjoying outdoor living. Mario Tush, straight in there with outdoor living. What other answers do we have here? We've got Adam Hall going straight into the big D.
I quite like the sound of all of these, maybe apart from the fruit-only diet. I'm not sure I could cope with that.
I'm not against it, but I feel I just get through too many apples. D's. We're seeing D's all over the shop here. The concept of enjoying outdoor living. It's got to be D. It's got to be D. So it does mean sort of, the direct translation is free air life. And that term's credited to a Norwegian playwright from the 1850s. And it's a poem on the height. So if you want to go and look that up and see how the Norwegians, for the last 150 years since this poem, have conceptualized the idea of just enjoying being outdoors. As Signe said so wonderfully earlier on, everything tastes better outdoors. Richard was out with his drams last night. Signe's been making some amazing stuff. So yeah, embrace that.
Henrik Ibsen, Norwegian playwright. We should give him a shout out for supposedly coming up with this concept of Friluftsliv. But we're but we're being forced to embrace it. So it's all good. Okay, the tasting notes for cask number 44135, Booze and Bonbon Blowout, which is a whiskey that's coming out in our next outturn. The tasting notes reference something called Vino Verde, and I'm probably saying that wrong as well. This is an evening of mispronunciation for me. What does Vino Verde refer to? Is it A, a green-coloured wine? Is it B, a young wine? Is it C, a wine distilled in copper stills?
Mhm.
Or is it D, a wine made from green grapes?
So, of course, we retain the verd in English with verdant when we describe a scene as something being verdant. So it's got that green element. But I was drinking wine with a Portuguese woman recently, safe social distance, etc., etc. And she explained to me the meaning of this. So actually, it's one I actually already knew, and I'm quite proud of my knowledge.
So you got one right tonight, Ali.
I got one right tonight. Aye. Of course, also my immaculate Norwegian one I got the before.
Vinny's going for wine from green grapes.
Wine from green grapes. What else we seeing here?
Could well be.
We've got Josh Birch Am with a D, wine made from green grapes. Fisher's going for a D. We've got Elam, your pal, a green coloured wine. B, Frank. Big Frank's coming in with a B. A young wine.
We're all over the place, really. So
We are.
Not an easy one. The answer is a young wine.
Yeah.
So the literal translation of Verde is, as you say, is green. But in this case, it refers to the fact that the wine is young. And Vino Verde from Portugal, it's released within 3 to 6 months after the grapes have been harvested. So there's no hanging about. They create the wine very quickly. So that's why they call it Vino Verde, literally green wine, but it refers to the age of the wine. So very young wine.
Hi, and we carry that sense in English as well. Like if somebody's a new recruit to a company or something, you might say they're a bit green, like if they're a bit inexperienced. So that idea of youth and greenness being associated.
Greenhorn.
Exactly. So next question. Some members might have already bought their whiskey advent calendars, the Society's much anticipated advent calendar of whiskey. What date does Advent actually start? So the whole concept of Advent. Is it Sunday the 29th of November? Is it Tuesday the 1st of December? Sunday the 6th of December? Or Monday the 7th of December? When does Advent start? So get those guesses in.
I'd say this is a tricky one because, we all talk about, everyone knows what an Advent calendar is. Usually as a kid, it's about opening a window for each day of December and getting a chocolate, some wee treat. Obviously, that's developed for us that we've got an Advent calendar of whiskey. So you can open the window and get a wee treat throughout December. But we don't, I'm certainly not very clear about what Advent means or when it starts.
Good. Actually, we're seeing a real. So on the earlier questions, folk were really homing in on one answer, but you're seeing quite a sort of a spread. It's a real shotgun blast approach for the audience.
Yeah.
So,
any idea. Right. So the answer is, hang on.
Sunday, the 29th of November. So who got that? Who got A? Josh Birch Am. Dirk, he got A. Big congratulations to you two. Was it just you two or did Eric? No, that was the previous question. So very well done, Elam and Josh there. Incredibly difficult.
Very good. And if I think we still have Advent whiskey calendars available, we have 25 drams to see you through December, regardless of when Advent officially starts. It's a really nice selection to see you through the month. A wee treat for each day. And it's not just whiskies, although there's a brilliant range of whiskies. I think there's some other spirits in there, cognac, maybe Armagnac, rum, but a brilliant selection. So if you fancy a wee treat, the Whiskey Advent Calendar is a good one. Right. Question 9. Who wrote the seminal cocktail book, How to Mix Drinks or the bon vivant's companion? So was it A, Harry Craddock? Was it, don't ask me, was it B, Michael Jackson? That's the writer, not the singer. Was it C, Jerry Thomas, or was it D, Dale DeGroff? So this is one for the cocktail enthusiasts out there.
This is one that I didn't know, and there's something about the surname Craddock. Doesn't it lend itself to a cocktail? Like, doesn't like, I'm not putting folk one way or the other, but Craddock sounds more like a kind of a yesterday's fishmonger. Maybe that's being prejudiced on me. Never know.
Vinny saying it sounds French.
Yeah, bon vivant. I mean, absolutely, the good living.
Good shout. That's the kind of university challenge approach where you try and analyze the question to find a clue before you come out with your answer. So
yeah. So yeah, it sounds French. Therefore, you can see the de Groff or something like that potentially if there's a French element there. Saying some C's, saying some B's.
Oh, who else have we got? There's Liam going for D. No, sorry, Liam. Right, the answer to that one is C, Jerry Thomas. And this was really the kind of original cocktail book. It was written by Jerry Thomas in 1862. And he was working at a place called the El Dorado Gambling Saloon in San Francisco. And the reason I put this in here really was because we've got a new issue of Unfiltered online today, and we're delving into the world of cocktails and mixing up a few pre-Christmas cocktails, easy to mix cocktails that you can do at home. But we wanted to kind of delve into some of the history of the cocktail scene. So we've got an article in Unfiltered about that, which references this book, the Bon Vivant's Companion. So check it out on Unfiltered to learn much more and to learn how to mix some nice cocktails. I think we've got a Negroni, an old-fashioned, and some classic cocktails like a Stinger and a nice milk punch as well. So some demonstrations online. So step-by-step stuff, and you can mix your own cocktail at home.
How tremendous does a session at the El Dorado Gambling? Oh. Yep, no, last question. But the El Dorado Gambling Saloon in San Francisco, would love to be there. Sounds like a great night. So the final question, this is your last chance to absolutely nail one. So like fingers on the buzzers, as it were. Worm tub condensers seem to be making a comeback in the Scotch industry. So worm tub condensers. Which distillery is this with worm tub condensers? Is it A, Ardnahoe, as we saw earlier on? Is it Ballindalach? Is it Dalwhinnie, right in the middle of Scotland? Or is it Mortlach? So, worm tub condensers they're relatively rare on the ground. So they're quite distinctive. If you've been there, they're so distinctive to see. Like, which distillery is this? Ardnahoe, Ballindalach, Dalwhinnie, or Mortlach? Who's getting the answer first? Who's sharp?
Vinny's in there with Dalwhinnie, and all of these distilleries obviously are distilleries which use worm tub condensers. But which one is it? There's Greg.
Exactly. Which specific one is this?
Good shout by Gregor.
Oh, is Gregor in there? Yeah. And it is, of course, as Gregor has correctly guessed there, it's Ballindalach. So very well done. So Ardnahoe as in the list there as well. Also on Islay, has also got worm tub condensers, but is using it over on Islay. And Rosebank is a resurrected distillery that's going to be that uses worm tubs as well. So they are increasingly popular. We were just mentioning cocktails there, and your man mentioned time for hot toddies tonight. So I don't know about cocktails. As I understand, a cocktail is to have 3 ingredients to be a cocktail. So when my granda, he lived till 99 3/4, so everything he does is basically you can take as a health remedy. All the way through the winter, he'd have his dram, a bit of like hot water, and a bit of honey or ginger or brown sugar mixed in with it. That's 3 ingredients. Is a hot toddy a cocktail? Have we been drinking cocktails this whole time?
I think that counts, isn't it? I would say, do you really need 3 ingredients? I'm not sure. But I think as soon as you, like a highball is really just whiskey and soda water with ice, but maybe does ice count as an ingredient? I'm not sure.
I need to check the big man's Bon Vivant guide from the El Dorado Saloon in San Francisco.
Exactly. Good stuff. Well done, everyone, for taking part in the quiz. No prizes at stake, just your honour as a whiskey drinker. But some of these questions weren't particularly related to drinking whiskey either, so maybe more general knowledge than anything else. So I think that's pretty much us. Ali, we've got one more tune from Breabach, which is going to play us out tonight. This one is called Knees Up in Hanoi, and it's a good energetic kind of jig to kind of see us out, but we'll play that before we say goodnight. So everyone top up your glasses and enjoy one more tune from Breabach. This is Knees Up at Hanoi.
1, 2.
Great stuff. That was Breabach with Knees Up in Hanoi. And I'll give a wee shout out to Breabach because they've got a new audio visual project coming out in February next year. It's a collaborative animated film that they've been working on with an animator called Kat Bruce. It's called Dusgad. Again, probably saying that wrong, but that is Gaelic for awakening, with new music and visuals coming out in February. And I think they're going to be screening it as part of a virtual tour early next year. So check in with their socials for that to find out when it's going to be out, and check it out. Absolutely brilliant. So Ali, that's us. We're wrapping up the pub session tonight, kicking out time. But been brilliant to have you on board with all your knowledge and input about Scots and about whiskey and everything else. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very, very much.
Here, Richard, thanks to you, and also thanks to Abdi for joining in so heartily. It's been really good fun. Like, we can't be in the pub together, but it's been a really nice way to spend a Friday. So cheers for hearing us along, and cheers, Abdi, at him for joining in and making it fun.
Brilliant. Right, Ali, good man. We will see you soon, and we will read your words fairly soon in Unfiltered as well. So look forward to that.
Cheers.
All the best. Right, folks, that's us kicking out time, as I said. But thank you again to Breabach and especially James from the band for sorting us out with those tracks, which I think everyone can agree brings a wee bit of, a balm for the soul at this fairly difficult times that we're all going through. Thanks again to Ali for joining in and being such a good sport with the Scots and everything else. Signa, our Norwegian expert on Hugya, which I'm probably still saying wrong, but absolutely brilliant. If you've not seen it already, there's a new issue of Unfiltered out today. So smws.com/unfiltered. Check it out. Lots of great stuff in there, including cocktails and whiskey knowledge, all kinds of great stuff. So check it out. What we've got coming up soon, we've got a live tasting on the 18th of this month. That's going to be hosted by Mads, along with our very good ambassadors Olaf and Les. So get your tasting packs ready, 5 cracking drams that those gentlemen are going to take you through. And we've got a big bumper outturn coming your way on the 20th of November in the UK and EU. So pre-Christmas bottlings, biggest outturn of the year. Get in amongst it. Make sure you get bottles for yourself or for your friends, for your family, whoever you think is going to appreciate a whiskey at this time of year. That's it from me. Thanks very much for joining us, taking part, giving us a shout out from wherever you are, and all the best. Slàinte to everyone. Stay safe, enjoy your whiskey, and we will see you very, very soon. Cheers now.